Hello everybody and welcome to another Deck Tech Tuesday. This week's deck I'm very excited to share with y'all. It is DJB Edwards mid-range Byakko Guo Jia Wind Guo Jia deck. Focusing on a lot of suppression synergies as well as a lot of kind of value generation. You know, some of the kind of common engines that Wind has been running, but using the Byakko engine to kind of achieve a win condition and to actualize some of that value. So really excited to share that with you today. It is a pretty complicated deck, so I'm going to share kind of what I've learned about it in this time, and also we'll have the locals video later this week to show it off. I'm also going to try to bring it to the regional this weekend. As you can see, I am fresh off the Orlando regional, first place on Wind Guo Jia Seiryu, similar to the list that I previewed on this channel a couple weeks ago. I was really well-fought battle by all players. Ended up taking first. Really excited for that. Figure I can give myself a little bit of a treat, and I can bring this deck, which, while competitive, isn't really tiered in the same way. You know, a lot of the kind of major players are, and I want to see what I can do with this similar strategy that, you know, pivots a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and start with the material deck. We are a Spirit of Wind deck. Ryer playing another mid-range Wind Slop deck, right? No surprises there. Spirit of Wind, and we are Guo Jia. We only go to Guo Jia level 2. And yeah, while we're here, I'll talk about it. We are on the Emerald Fatestone, Byakko, the Tiger, as our Shenju of choice. So Guo Jia 1 and 2 probably need no introduction. Guo Jia level 1 summons the Fatestone. Guo Jia level 2 either draws you a card or gives you 2 quest counters. The Fatestone is pretty interesting. It has an ability on it that for 4 you can tap it and suppress any object, basically. It's an item, weapon, or ally, but on either side of the board, and you can only do that once. And then every time you do any suppression of any kind, you get a quest counter. You can flip it at 8 quest counters, and it flips into the Tiger, which is a 6/6 with Spell Shroud and Vigor. 6/6 with Spell Shroud and Vigor, and 2 effects. The first of which is you pay 2 less for the first animal or beast that you activate each turn. And the second one is all beast allies you control lose pride. Not terribly relevant on the second ability. We're not actually running anything that has pride, but that first ability is a house, and also just being a 6/6 with Spell Shroud and Vigor. You know, what's not to like? And it's pretty easy to get to that win condition as well. Not too much in the material deck that's maybe unstandard. I'll just talk about what's standard in the material deck first. So we have our draw cards. We have Grand Crusader's Ring as our divine relic, and we have Portentous Tengu, which can replace itself in Purifying Thurible. Excuse me. I'm tripping up a little bit here. These are our 3, you know, draw regalias. Largely, we're using these 2 to draw, because in this deck, the Portentous Tengu has a, you know, more relevant, I guess, role. It on enter gives you a quest counter, and then if you suppress it, you'll get a quest counter from your Emerald Fatestone, and then when it comes back in, it'll give you another quest counter. So if you're trying to rush to that activated Byakko, you have this as a target for your suppression effects in order to give you more quest counters a little bit more acceleratedly. And then there's a bunch of tech slots. We have Nullifying Lantern, Sensor of Restful Peace, Safeguard Amulet, and Tariff Ring. And we'll talk about that when we get to the allies in the main board. But being, you know, a Wind mid-range deck, one of the things we do best is control the pace of the game, control the board state, make sure your opponent's not doing anything that we don't want them to do. And so, depending on the matchup, you know, right, you've got Genbu, like these 2, you've got Fractals with these 2, you know, you've got some, like, Fire Allies decks with these 2, maybe, Fire level 3 decks, sometimes you want to hit these 2. You usually have some pretty relevant tech pieces in the matchup, and, you know, we're pretty low to the ground as far as, you know, we don't go to level 3, we don't have a lot of memory cost in our material deck, and so there's a lot of room kind of for these tech cards. That said, if you have a more, I guess, targeted meta, or if you're a little more familiar with your meta, you could switch up these tech slots. I'm just running his list as it was run in an online regional a few weeks ago. And just note that these are essentially flex slots. And if you're someone who more so prefers, I don't know, Orb of Sealing, because there's a lot of Baleful Ablation in your meta, or maybe you prefer something like Smoke Bombs because you run into a lot of defensive opponents, feel free to, switch up these techs, right? There's a lot of things you can do. Then the last one, I wasn't a believer until I started messing around and playing with this deck. Effigy of Gaia. Actually a really neat card from way back in FTC. 2 effects. First one is class bonus Tamer. If you have an animal or beast ally, you gain +1 level. Pretty relevant. And then also, if your opponent activates an attack card with Cleave, all of your allies get +2 life until the end of turn. So it makes surviving Cleave a little bit more relevant. Maybe only in our Fire Lorraine style matchups does that ever really come up. But what that +1 level is very, very relevant. We only run level 1 and level 2, and we actually have some effects in our deck that care about our champion's level, and we can't always materialize level 2 when we need that level. So if we are tight on resources or really can't afford to banish those 2 cards to go to level 2, we can use Effigy of Gaia, because Byakko is a beast when flipped. So if we're going for the win, if Byakko is a beast when flipped, we have that animal or beast to meet that condition, and we will be level 2, even though we're only on our level 1 champion. So actually a really strong kind of, not tech card, a really strong like enabler for some of our combo kills. All right, so that's the material deck. Main deck, a lot of common players, I guess, in a lot of these style of mid-range win decks. So I might move through some of these pretty quickly. You've probably seen them a bunch of times. Of course, Baby Green Slime, the best suppressor in the business, is going to be a 4 of in this deck. Aeson Protector, the mid-range wind powerhouse that he is also going to be a 4 of in this deck. Probably no surprises there. We get to reuse our creature, our ally effects, and we get to create these like really beefy board states. Let's see. Also, kind of standard as expected win cards. We got Triple Dream Fairy. Excuse me, I dropped a card. Okay, we back. We got Triple Dream Fairy in there. Deals with a lot of troublesome opposing allies. Helps with a lot of matchups where, can't otherwise get through like a Taunter or an Interceptor or something like that. Let's see. 4 Fairy Whispers. Just going through kind of your mid-range win staples that I feel kind of need no introduction, especially on this channel at this point. 4 Fairy Whispers. Search for your stuff. Get your stuff better. 2 Scout the Land. 4 Veiling Breeze. And I would say that's it kind of for your mainstay stapley wind cards that you've seen probably a million times on this channel already. You largely know what to do with these, right? This is your defensive card. These are your searchers. These are your main kind of activity pieces that get the engine going, that you can recur and get value out of. So speaking of getting value, since we have a suppression engine built right into our material deck, we have a lot of allies and objects that generate value on enter. The first, unsurprisingly, is going to be a Forest Cake, right? What's a Baby Green without a Forest Cake? We're running that at 4 in this deck. One of the best pieces to hit with Baby Green, it redraws you a card when it re-enters. Also in this deck, as you play your animal or beast allies, they can eat the cake to get those last few points of damage in. 4, Zhang Zhao, Way of Peace. I'll talk about a little bit more with her when I talk about combos that I've kind of found with this deck and that I've been told about. But Zhang Zhao, Way of Peace, very versatile card. It could be healing in your aggro matchups. It can be hand rip in your long game matchups. It can do a lot. And, a really incredible suppression target with Zhang Zhao. I'll kind of talk a little bit about her once I lay out kind of the whole deck. 4 of Kind Beast Caller. I think the more I'm kind of messing with this deck, the more I realize how important this card is to the deck. You kind of need Baby Green to get your main pieces going. Kind Beast Caller finds Baby Green. And so if you go turn 1 play, turn 1 play something like a Fairy Whispers or a Scout the Land to level up. you go influence, mostly influence neutral. You play this kind Beast Caller, get your +1. Suppress this kind Beast Caller, get another +1. You've searched at least 10 cards deep, probably more, for a baby green slime. You've probably found a baby green slime. You probably get your engine rolling at that point. Couple smaller value pieces. We got 3 Fluffy Shopkeep. Hard to use more than once in the deck, I would say, but definitely a pretty good turn 1 play. Also keeps you kind of safe. In a world where you don't foresee needing, what did I say? We have 4-ish tech pieces in the material deck. If you do have to suppress her to get another draw, if none of the tech pieces are terribly useful in the matchup, you can get another draw out of suppressing her. But largely, she's a turn 1 play that replaces herself, and then you get to use, that banish to go to level 1 and get things rolling. And then a small one. This is kind of the Edward special, right? Scavenging Raccoon is a 2-of in this deck. There's no way to use it at fast speed. We're not running Expeditious Opening. We're not running Displace. So there's no way to use this at fast speed. This is, though, something I've noticed, and I'm sure many of you have as well, is cards like Gentle Respite are making a huge resurgence in the meta with the new hand rules. Slow floats are on the menu, so Gentle Respite being the most popular among them, but there's a couple other ones. Some water decks are running, like Will to Save. Some Luxem decks are running Return to the Archive, right? So there's a lot of slow float out there, and I think Scavenging Raccoon punishes slow float really, really well. And so just a 2-of in the deck. Also notably an animal, so it kind of rounds out that animal count for your kind Beast Caller to whiff less. Also a 2-cost, which means Byakko you can play it for free on any turn that you have Byakko flipped. So these are kind of your value pieces for the deck. This is a suppression engine deck. So we, of course, need things that suppress. We already saw the baby green slime. But we're also running 4 Scattering Gust, 2 Zephyrs, 4 Verdigris Decrees as suppression activators in the deck. Scattering Gust, I was not a believer of this card for a minute. I thought 4 cost was too much. I thought you would never find a good window to use it. How are you ever going to have 2 allies in play to get full value out of it? It's there. It's Imperious Galebind, I've talked about on the channel before as well, as a very, 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 very strong card. So something that's like half as good as that, right? It does cost 4 and it does only suppress 2, but you can use it from the start of the game. It's pretty dang good. Yes, it can't hit Forest Cakes. Yes, it can't hit... it can only hit allies, rather. But that's good enough, honestly. You hit your own kind Beast Caller and your Baby Green... That's a draw 2, right? So it does get the job done. It disrupts opponents' plays. We can't run Galebind in this deck. It would just be way too slow. You would have to get to level 3 to activate it. So this is a suitable substitute. Zephyr is a little more versatile, right? You can hit your own cake with this. You can hit some other problematic cards, maybe some of your opponent's weapons or some of your opponent's items with this. So Zephyr, kind of rounding out. It's essentially you're like 4 of this and then 2 Zephyr and then 4 Verdigris Decree. One of my favorite cards in the game, honestly, Verdigris Decree, right? So versatile. You're almost always imbuing it to suppress one of your allies, like the kind Beast Caller, and do something else. Even the +2 damage comes up a lot in this deck because you're really trying to push damage. You're really trying to just make it so that your Byakko can find lethal as soon as you're able to flip him. And yeah, I think it fits perfectly with this mold of deck. No Displace. That is not a suppress, so it is out of the deck. Even though you do get the effect instantly, it's something I'm kind of thinking about maybe trying. But right now, like I said, I'm running it as he did just because he knows it better than anybody else. Okay, so just to kind of round out the deck, talk about the last few pieces. We've got 4 Brisk Windtrotter. Where are they? 4 Brisk Windtrotter and 4 Byakko's Command. A lot of 4-ofs in this deck. This deck is very straightforward in what it's trying to do. This deck knows what it's trying to do. This is kind of your win the game set of cards. So 4 Brisk Windtrotter on enter, put a buff counter on something. If you're level 2 or higher, put a second buff counter on either the same thing or a buff counter on something different. super duper strong. Byakko's command, untap target beast, and put a buff counter on it. So largely the way that you win the game with this deck is you are going to have the ability to flip your Fabled Emerald Fatestone. So it's going to come as Byakko, 6/6. You will, for 0, play Brisk Windtrotter because your first Animor Beast is free on the turn. That puts 2 buff counters on Byakko. He's now an 8/8. Swing for 8. Before damage, Byakko's command will untap it and make it a 9 that's coming in. Then you can swing again for 9. And then Brisk Windtrotter can swing for at least 1. So that's 20. That's 19 damage right there. If you have any forest cakes from earlier in the game, the Windtrotter can eat those forest cakes. If you have any other allies on board that have survived, it's really hard to kill the allies in this deck. They all come in for an additional swing. They've probably already chipped in a little bit. And so, no rocket science groundbreaking combo really, but it's just, you go for like 18 damage with a Byakko plus a Brisk Windtrotter plus a Byakko's command. That tends to be the way that you get in for lethal, or you just overwhelm them earlier in the game with your Ace and Protector, Kind Beast Caller, Value Train, where you can just play ally after ally after ally. Byakko, the last card in the deck is a 4-of. I love this card too, Longtail Grovesword. Fast activate native, and then if you're level 1 or higher, it's just a 2/3 for 3. So it's an on-rate ally. Since your plan is pretty much to get to level 1 as soon as possible in this deck. It's an on-rate ally that is an animal, so it can eat forest cakes, so it has all your other synergies. You can find it with Kind Beast Caller. And then, because it has fast activate, it, as well as, Baby Green Slime, which is also fast activate, gives you an ally that you can play on your opponent's turn using Byakko's discount. Byakko says each turn, the first Animor Beast you activate costs 2 less to activate. So you can just pay 1 for a Grovesword on your opponent's turn and, tempo out some extra bodies when you're going for that push, when you're going for that kill turn. That said, Seiryu is pretty popular in the meta, so people are packing ways to deal with Shenjus. I advise that you tread, kind of carefully when you activate your Byakko. It is very possible, and you don't have your level 2 lineage release because we don't go to level 3, so it is very possible that your Byakko could just get smoked the turn that he comes down, or I should say the following turn. Usually it's a slow answer that most people have. Could get smoked the turn he comes down, and this deck doesn't have a lot of good ways to bring him back. If he outright dies, you just can't. And if he gets Dream Ferried or Ensnaring Fumes or Fishing Accidented or something like that, you have to pay 8 to get him back out. We run 0 float main deck, so it's rather hard to do that, rather hard to pay 8 to get him back out. And then once he's flipped, he has Spell Shroud and is an ally, so nothing in our deck can suppress a Spell Shrouded ally. Baby Green can't hit an ally, and then all the other ones that suppress are spells. So you cannot suppress a flipped Byakko in this deck to bring him back as a Fate Stone and save him from a removal spell or from something like that. So just be aware of that. It isn't a turbo to Byakko, flip him, and then just get in for 6 a few times. It's get to Byakko pretty quickly, but have your Byakko's command and Brisk Windtrotter ready to finish the game when you do so. Really quickly, side deck. Side deck is super versatile. It's really just whatever you think you're going to run into. This was constructed for the online regional, and it looks like Edward was really prepped for fractals, because in here we have a Beast Bond Boots, giving you a bit of Spell Shroud. We have 3 Scatter Essence, which is good into the fractals matchup, of course. Also good into Fire Diao-chan, if that's a deck you expect to play. 2 Calming Breeze. Pretty generically good into Fire Aggro, but also good into fractals. So I think he was prepping pretty hard for fractals. Other cards we see in here: 3 Crystallized Destiny, good generic. Big damage negation, good against Tristan, good against Oblation, good against things like that. 2 Unbroken Mustang, largely to break Nullifying Mirror, I imagine. If you see your opponent bring a Nullifying Mirror, or if there's any other kind of maybe problematic cards, this is a good suppression target. You can blow up opponents' weapons with this too if they're on a you know, like a Fire Lorraine aggro strategy or something like that. Pretty good to blow up some of their weapons. And then a Dream Fairy, 4th Dream Fairy. This is for the Shenju matchup. And then I put 1 Innervate Agility. This was a Scout the Land, which I think was just probably filler in the moment. I don't think Scout the Land is particularly good or better in any matchup. But yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on the side because even I spoke with him a little bit. It's whatever you think you need to side, right? There's a lot of options. You're in Wind, you can side Stifling Trap if you think you're going to run into stuff like that. You can side more Calming Breeze. You can side like Cleansing Reunion if you really want to go down the Graveyard Hate route. You could side a lot of different things. I think Displace is a pretty reasonable side option. I think it makes it harder for the like Seiryu and Genbu decks to find kills against you because you can displace your Dream Fairy. It also opens up lines to like play Brisk Windtrotter, smack in, displace the Brisk Windtrotter, get another 2 counters. But that said, it doesn't help until you either need it as like a tech piece or until you're winning the game. So how you want to use your side is entirely up to you. But that's just some ideas for it. Okay, so I want to talk about combos a little bit before we wrap up here. There are a lot of really neat things you can do with this deck. And I want to talk about, I guess, the kind of bread and butter. So you're getting to level 1 as soon as possible. You know, don't recklessly level, but if you have a Fairy Whispers or a Scout the Land or a Fluffy Shopkeep or a Forest Cake, anything that replaces itself, use that draw to, you know, build your own floating memory, basically. Like, just lay your junkie cards and get to level 1, get your Byakko out. And then from there, you have a lot of options. So the best one, and this is the one that was kind of shown to me at first, in my opinion, the best one. What you want to do is, if you can, use the Forest Cake to, or I guess here's the simplest one. Let me start with a simple one. So obviously there's a lot of different ways this can go. There's a lot of different combos you can do. But the main one is, okay, so you're on 7 cards. You level to Guo Jia 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You level to Guo Jia 1, you lose 1. You're on 6 cards. You draw for turn. And so you're on 7 cards. With these 7 cards, you're going to lay 3. Here, let me just swap one of these out. With these 7 cards, so you have 7 cards. Oh my gosh, wrong spot. With these 7 cards, you're going to lay 3. And you're going to play Kind Beast Caller. Kind Beast Caller is going to search your top 5. It's going to grab you an animal or beast. That's going to leave you with 4 cards in hand. Assuming you went first and leveled. If you went second, you'll even have 5 cards in hand here. So if you went first and just straight leveled with a redraw, you have 4 cards in hand. If you did not level with a redraw, you will not have 4 cards in hand. If you just had to like play an ally to level, unfortunately, you will not be able to do this. But now you pass back to your opponent's turn. You have your Byakko activation up. You have your Kind Beast Caller out. And what you can do is, when they go to kill the Kind Beast Caller, or even just before end of main, you can activate your Fate Stone, suppress your Kind Beast Caller, go to quest counter. It'll come back. It'll search your top 5 for another animal or beast. As mentioned, this is now 10 cards deep you've searched. You've probably found a baby green, and now you're rolling. So that's like one of the main kind of openers that you want to do. Or look to do. You know, that's just a very basic example of getting the value engine rolling. Another thing you can do is, once you're in this point, and this isn't necessarily like a card counting combo, but one thing that's really important that kind of makes this deck tick, that you know, is kind of necessary, is Baby Green Slime is not as a spell. So when you play Baby Green Slime, you can target your Emerald Fate Stone. It is an item. And so when you target that, it will suppress. And then the way the game works is that Fate Stone sees itself getting suppressed. And so because it sees itself getting suppressed, Guo Jia will get a quest counter for the Emerald Fate Stone effect. Any suppressions you do while it's banished will not count, but the suppression of the Fate Stone itself will count. So you get a quest counter, then it'll come back in, and the game will see this as a new object. So you have the pay for activate it again, probably on your baby green. That gives you another quest counter. On that end step, baby green comes back in, can reset your Sapphire Fate Stone, or not Sapphire, Emerald Fate Stone. And so if you have a baby green, you have essentially a 4 reserve cost way to generate 2 quest counters each turn cycle. It's not the cleanest. It's not the cleanest way, but it is something you can do, especially if your opponent's being slow and not really trying to do anything against you. You have a lot of options there. Another line you can take. So again, 7 cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Let's say this is just starting from turn 1. 7 cards in hand. Turn 1, you go Forest Cake. Again, it's sufficient because it's a card that replaces itself. You draw a card. You use one of these 2 to level. You go into Guo Jia. You get your Fate Stone. Prior to Recollection, you can activate Fate Stone, target the Forest Cake, recollect. So you're going to get that card back. Draw. Let me just make sure I have the full combo in here. I don't. Though some of this doesn't matter, but this was a really cool one that I was shown. And so you went from 7 to 7 to 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. So after you draw for turn, you can then play a Kind Beast Caller. That'll search your top 5. You grab an animal or beast. You're on 4 cards in hand now. You can then, swing with the Kind Beast Caller, do whatever. End step, your cake is going to come back. You can draw a card. And then you have, a bunch of cards in hand, so you can do something like imbue Verdigris Decree, suppress the Kind Beast Caller, and then it'll come back in again, and you'll get another search. So play around with it. I think counting your cards is really important because you're going to get more cards as your Kind Beast Caller suppressed back in, as your Forest Cake suppressed back in. And then if you don't need the cards, you have the option to either suppress your Emerald Fate Stone, or if you want to, you can suppress your Portentous Tengu over and over again to generate it at twice the speed. So, baby green, suppress Tengu. That'll give you a counter. It'll come back in, gain a counter. Activate Fate Stone, suppress baby green. That'll give you a 3rd counter. Baby green comes in on end step, suppresses Tengu. That'll give you a 4th counter. On the next end, the Tengu comes back in, gives you a 5th counter. So you can get counters pretty quickly. The secret, though, or I guess the key, is baby green. You kind of need baby green slime to really get things rolling. Another card I want to talk about, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is Zhang Zhao. One of the trickiest cards in the deck, I would say. Definitely she can do a lot, and definitely it's really easy to misplay with her. But one of the most straightforward lines you can do with her is you can lay 3 to play her. Her on enter will go on the stack. You can hold that priority on that trigger, lay 4 to activate the Byakko Fate Stone, and suppress Zhang Zhao. What does that do? Well, the first effect will resolve, the on enter. You have 7 in memory. So 7 in memory says each opponent discards a card from their memory at random. That happens. On the end step, because you suppressed her, she comes back in, triggers her on enter again. You still have 7, so you rip 2 cards by doing that, by playing Zhang Zhao and activating Byakko. That said, if you don't have more cards in hand to back that up, she will be exposed on your opponent's turn. So be a little careful when you do that. The other one with Zhang Zhao that's maybe a little more common or a little more known is if you go a full turn cycle and she stays alive, which in this deck, again, it's very hard for them to kill your allies. You don't have Reclaim, and you don't have things like Ensnaring Fumes, and you don't have a lot of bounce effects, but a suppression is just as good as a bounce in many cases. So you often have a way to suppress your ally and keep them alive, right? Like, for example, for me, if I was going into this turn, I would probably just play Zhang Zhao, get the heal, swing in, and then use the Fate Stone to protect her if they do try to destroy her. And then on their end step, they'll have to discard a card. But the other one is, if you go to your turn, you know, you materialize whatever. Let's just make Tengu. And then prior to Recollection, you activate a card that suppresses Zheng Chao. Any fast card that'll do it. She'll blink out. You'll recollect and draw. And if you just go straight to end step, she'll return. And on enter, you'll have 0 cards in your memory because you recollected the ones that you spent to suppress her. So you get to draw 2. And then again, that's probably more suppressions. That's probably keeping her alive. In fact, one thing you can do, even if you want to, is once that resolves, you can then suppress her on your own end. Ooh, that's not a suppression card. You could suppress her on your own end step. Let's just say we activate Byakko. Suppress her on your own end step. She won't come back until your opponent's end step. And if you could play other cards, like here I have a Tengu out, right? So I can just activate the Tengu on my turn, on my opponent's end step as she's coming back into play. And I'll have 7 again, and I'll rip another card out of memory. Probably one of the hardest cards to play with in the deck. There's a lot of lines and a lot of things to consider with her. But she benefits so well from suppression shenanigans. Yeah, I think that's largely it. I am keeping it a little, well, I was keeping it a little shorter than I started talking about combos. I am keeping it a little shorter today. I am going to play this deck at locals this week. We'll have at least one match from that up on the channel. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I could take on the Pennsylvania Regional with this deck. I'm going to have fun no matter what. And then also let me know what other decks you're interested in seeing. I am trying to do a mix of kind of fun decks, but also decks that place pretty well in events. So I have some other ideas, but if you have ideas too, I would love to hear it. Even just share a deck list in the comments and maybe I'll take a look at it and talk about what I think about it. Alrighty, so as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. If you're not already following, if you think you're following me, you may not be. This is a new channel. Again, not again. From before when I was doing other stuff, this is a new channel. So do check and see if you're subscribed. I would appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button and keep playing GA. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.